feel like this is going to be a good year.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
And a good evening to you. I'm Brian Loftus. Thank you for joining us for this 8 News Now special production. Less than 2 months ago, Dr. Jesus Jara took the reins of the nation's 5th largest school district, and he'll start his role as superintendent facing a $68 million budget shortfall heading into the new school year. Over the summer, that meant cutting more than 550 teacher jobs at a time classrooms are already bursting at the seams.
We are having to cut teacher positions and make class sizes even larger next school year. My chemistry classes average 36 students.
And that is just one of the issues he'll need to address.
The problem is we don't have enough funding now. What are our legislators doing? Are they coming out to classrooms? Are they asking folks? Are they going out to the community?
We just want to make sure that African American students have the same opportunities that everyone else has.
I want 2018 to be the year that we can understand that we are all humans, no matter what gender.
Tonight, we are taking a look at the new path forward for the Clark County School District under Dr. Jara's leadership. Dr. Jara spent some time at our station recently where I was able to discuss each of these issues in detail with him. While he's well aware of the challenges he's up against, he says he's up for it, and he wants to start with 2 things: transparency and equity.
We need to be transparent about what we're doing in the school system with our overall community. That's one of the things. The other piece is really equity. And the opportunity for all children to really receive that high, rigorous opportunity, high quality instruction in every classroom every single day.
Equity means giving every child in the school district an equal chance, and that means closing the opportunity gap. Nevada has the lowest high school graduation rate for both African American and Latino students among all the Intermountain West states. 8 News Now reporter Shakayla Alvarenga takes a closer look at our first issue and talks to some who have high expectations for change.
In Nevada, the opportunity gap remains significant. It has for years.
So we just want to make sure that African American students have the same opportunities that everyone else has so that they can be set up for success when they come out of high school.
Lisa Mosley serves on the executive board of the Clark County Black Caucus. It's an advocacy organization working to close the gap. She told us what she believes the problem is.
One of the biggest things is the disparities in discipline that we see. Black kids are suspended and expelled in higher numbers than anybody else. Also Latino students.
If you can't go to school, your grades drop. If your grades drop, you won't graduate. It's a harmful ripple effect, and one that happens all too often.
There used to be a zero tolerance policy, and the principals of our school have done really well with not implementing that zero tolerance policy and going to a progressive disciplinary policy.
Mosley and her team have advocated for a number of changes, including better access to magnet schools for black students. According to a recent study in Nevada, 58.1% of African American students graduate, 69.2% of Latinos, and 79.8% of white students. Mosley knows just how dangerous of a problem these disparities really are.
We don't want to see them in the adult incarceration system. There's enough of black folks in that system already. So we're working hard at the educational level, primary, secondary as well, to make sure that those students end up being productive and graduating from high school and going on to college and able to take care of themselves and their families.
She hopes more can be done now that a new superintendent has stepped in.
Every student in every zip code should have the great opportunity to a high quality education, right? So that's one of the things that will continue to accelerate, where all kids, no matter their zip code, they're going to be able to perform at high levels. And that's where my team and the team that's here is going to be able to do.
Shakayla Alvarenga, 8 News Now.
When kids head back to school on August 13th, thousands of them will do so at one of 4 new elementary schools. The schools were built in some of the valley's fastest growing areas, all in hopes of alleviating issues associated with overcrowding. Kenneth Divich Elementary will ease some of the growing pains in the valley's northwest. Dennis Ortwine Elementary and Robert and Sandy Ellis Elementary are opening up shop in the southern part of the Las Vegas Valley, and Shirley A. Barber is in the southeast. Meantime, in Laughlin, community members have asked for a new elementary school for years. The existing Bennett Elementary was originally built with portable classrooms, never intended to be permanent. Concerns led staff to move 4th and 5th graders to the high school last year. Staff say that worked well, but realized the high school now was missing one thing Bennett did have: a playground. In response, the Laughlin community raised $30,000 to build one for the kids.
We've reached out to people that make their money in Laughlin to donate to this Laughlin project.
And they have.
And they have done it. The county has given us not one nickel. The school district hasn't given us a nickel.
But even with the money, the playground is months from being built. Critics say dealing with Clark County and CCSD is slowing down the process and putting construction grants in jeopardy. District officials say these steps are nothing unusual. Now, something we hear from our viewers on an almost daily basis is where the marijuana money that was supposed to go to schools, where is it? The 15% excise tax on pot sales in Nevada that voters passed in 2016. Amy, for example, writes in, "My main concern is the marijuana tax money being in a rainy day fund. Seems to me the rainy day is now." We shared Amy's concerns with Dr. Jara. Here's what he had to say.
We see that there's a great need in our school system. So those are some of the conversations that we need to have in Carson City, is how does that fit into our overall budget ask moving forward. So it's a great question, and it's something that we certainly need to have that conversation with our leaders in the state.
In other words, it's something a new governor could work lawmakers on next year. Well, a year before the Read by Grade 3 program kicks in, more than half of the state's third graders are not proficient in reading. The state has been working with schools since the law passed in 2015 to try to turn that trend around. As Patrick Walker explains, teachers are skeptical that the program will succeed.
In a state that ranks near the bottom in so many educational metrics, one number summarizes many of the issues: 45%. Less than half of Nevada's nearly 38,000 third-grade students are testing as proficient in reading, according to the latest Nevada Department of Education scorecard. To some teachers, like elementary school librarian Nicole Bratsolius, the reason is simple.
Well, Patrick, the problem is we don't have enough funding now.
Bratsolius is concerned that the state's efforts to tackle third-grade literacy have fallen short.
What are our legislators doing? Are they coming out to classrooms? Are they asking folks? Are they going out to the community?
The most controversial part of that Read by Grade 3 law is the provision that starting at the end of the 2019-2020 school year, third graders are to be held back if they cannot demonstrate proficiency in literacy.
Although the bill was written thoughtfully and with great intent, as happens with most policy, the implementation of it gets a little bit muddled.
Anna Sliding is also an elementary school teacher and the policy director at the public education advocacy group Hope for Nevada. She agrees with Bratsolius that it comes down to funding, saying a lack of dollars has hindered how many resources can be dedicated to underperforming third graders, as principals and district officials have had to deal with budget shortfalls across the Clark County School District.
There's just never enough funding to cover all of the mandates, never enough time, never enough training for the already worked principals and teachers to try to be compliant with these bills.
Both teachers are concerned that the Read by 3 program could fail because there's not enough time, in their opinion, to make a serious dent in the number of children who could be held back.
I really believe in what we're doing here. I think that we're at a really pivotal point where we can make a difference for kids.
Joan Jackson is the Southern Nevada administrator of the Read by Grade 3 program for the Nevada Department of Education. She says since lawmakers passed the law in 2015, the state has required every elementary school to hire a learning strategist to help teachers prepare for the program, and it has doled out tens of millions of dollars in grants to schools to help implement reading programs. And she says if a third grader doesn't pass the literacy test, there are a number of ways to avoid being held back.
They could demonstrate proficiency on an alternate assessment. They could demonstrate proficiency through a portfolio that shows that they've reached mastery. There could be, they could be a student with an individualized education plan, which there are contingencies for those, students who need that. There are contingencies for students who are English language learners. It's not just one test makes the decision.
Bottom line, Jackson says, though more than 11,000 students in Clark County right now aren't up to speed, the actual number of students who will probably be held back after the law fully kicks in the spring of 2020 will likely be much smaller. Patrick Walker, 8 News Now.
Thanks, Patrick. Coming up next on Back to School, a new path forward for CCSD. A local high school turns to metal detectors to thwart violent attacks. Plus,
there were some kids that were scared to come to school because they felt, well, could it happen here? Is it going to happen?
How school shootings across the country are affecting Valley students and the new task force making sure one doesn't happen here.
Neighborhood, Mondays this fall.
Well, on the other side of the country in Parkland, Florida, surviving students of the worst school shooting in U.S. history will be required this year to walk through metal detectors. It's part of a new security measure 6 months after the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High. Similar safety measures are happening right here at home. Teachers at Cheyenne High School were told metal detectors will eventually be used on a daily basis there. Dr. Jara tells us that making metal detectors a district-wide initiative is something on his radar ahead of the upcoming academic year. Well, in response to shootings like the one in Parkland, Florida, the state of Nevada has launched a new plan to make our campuses safer. It was in March that Governor Brian Sandoval created the Nevada Statewide School Safety Task Force. 8 News Now reporter Karen Castro has more on the solutions board members have come up with.
Ahead of the first day of school, members of the task force have submitted a list of recommendations to Governor Sandoval. Among their priorities are more mental health experts and school police officers, but they'll need legislative approval to pay for additional resources that they believe will prevent a tragedy at our schools.
The images are horrifying, but becoming far too common. Students visibly distraught, running for cover as a shooter unleashes hell on their school.
It's come to a point to where I get up and I go to work and I just wonder because you never know.
Jay Fair is a teacher at Brindley Middle School. After the mass shooting at a Texas high school, she sat down to talk with all of her students and hear their concerns, or at least with the ones who showed up.
The next day, actually, we did have our attendance actually dropped. There were some kids that were scared to come to school because they felt, well, could it happen here? Is it going to happen?
Efforts to improve safety at every single school in Nevada are underway.
I think it's all about prevention.
16-year-old Ashley Macias is a student at Mojave High School. She's also the youngest member of the Nevada Statewide School Safety Task Force, the group in charge of coming up with new ideas to prevent violence on campuses.
And I personally have a younger sister who's entering 5th grade, knowing that by the time she's in high school, she feels completely safe. Like, she knows that she's okay with everything in her school.
The soon-to-be senior has provided first-hand accounts of the vulnerabilities at schools as well as what's working so far.
Like now, and I feel like more safe actually with like seeing hall monitors out and seeing people that I know like will actually care for us.
The task force has handed over a report outlining improvements to school safety. Among the list of recommendations is more behavioral health resources, including counselors.
We heard many times from our students that behavioral health is an issue and that they wanted more professionals in the building.
Christy McGill is the director of the Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment at the State Department of Education. She also believes more law enforcement presence at schools is needed. But to pay for all of it, they have to turn to the state legislature, which meets next year. They're also looking at other options.
The governor's task force is looking for all kinds of money. So not only local dollars right here, but also looking at federal grants.
Other improvements may not come with a big price tag. The task force is suggesting implementing de-escalation plans when a conflict occurs. They also want schools to look at limiting points of entry, something that Fairs School is already considering.
So if we leave all of our doors open throughout the day so that the kids can get around, we're also leaving those doors open to outside threats, which is why we're trying to eliminate that.
A final report from the task force is due to the governor by November 30th. If you would like to read the full list of recommendations, head on over to our website, lasvegasnow.com. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Karen. Coming up next, could the way funds are distributed in the school district be hurting low-income kids?
It ends up shorting the students that probably need the most funding.
State lawmakers require the Education Department to look into equity. After the break, we'll show you what they
American Car of the Year.
A new study by the State Department of Education finds that the way our school district is allocating funds may actually be hurting schools in lower socioeconomic areas. 8 News Now reporter Darlene Melendez has a look at why.
In this 100-page report, the State Department of Education examined CCSD's current budget distribution, and the conclusion is that not all students in our valley are getting the resources that they need and deserve.
Here's the middle schools.
For the past 10 years, David Tatlock has taught in Valley schools. Before our interview, he combed through a recent study by the State Department of Education on CCSD's budget.
That's almost 8 to 10 times the amount per student.
The report comes after the 2015 session. Assembly Bill 469 required the department to look at the reorganization of the district, specifically CCSD's distribution of funds. It explains the current budgeting process. The average teacher's salary across the district determines how much each individual school gets for its staff budget. The report explains the current practice is inequitable.
So you have a group of teachers who earn less than average, you don't get to keep the difference. And if you're at a school who actually has higher than average costs and salaries, you're actually made up for by those schools that are lower.
Some schools, like magnet schools, get extra funds, but schools serving students in low social economic areas don't. Many of those schools have large populations of students that need more resources. Students in poverty, are at risk, or are English learners. Tatlock would know he's taught both.
It ends up shorting the students that probably need the most funding. There's a lot more heartbreaking issues that you come across.
Superintendent Jesus Jara has overseen the school district a little more than a month. He says the issue isn't specific to CCSD, it's nationwide.
The exciting piece is that it's documented, and now how do we partner with our teachers union and the legislature to address a problem that is across the country.
Ruben Murillo is the president of NSEA, one of 2 teachers unions in the Valley. For him, the solution isn't simple.
A lot of people are proposing that depending on how many students you have, depending on if they're free and reduced lunch, weighted funding formulas, that the money should follow those students to those schools. And while that's a great idea and we should take a look at that, it should not be at the expense of other schools.
What Murillo described is a per-pupil budgeting model, and it is what the Department of Education recommends.
We know we can do better as a state, and we know we can move towards a more equitable funding system within Clark.
The report acknowledges that the switch would be disruptive to some schools, but would result in greater equity overall. This CCSD teacher agrees.
Students that have more things to overcome to achieve, it's natural and logical to think we've got to give them a little more help and give those staffs a little more help.
And as part of the study, the State Department of Education is requiring CCSD to create a funding equity working group that's supposed to implement that per pupil funding model. The deadline was initially August 1st, but it's been put on hold until they receive national support from U.S. education. Reporting from CCSD, Darlene Melendez, 8 News Now.
Thank you, Darlene. And the State Department of Education says it will look to other districts in the country that have facilitated the funding transition. It adds that this report is about how funds are distributed, not the amount of funds available, noting that they're both important but separate conversations. Well, coming up next, if you want one of the best fine arts educations in the entire country, you won't have to go far. I'll look at some of CCSD's incredible accomplishments, including a jazz program with more Grammy Awards than any other high school in America.
News Now.
One of the biggest and best places to get an education in fine arts in the entire country is right here in the Clark County School District.
The Clark County School District has the largest fine arts program in the entire United States.
Of the 5 largest school districts in the nation, CCSD is the only district that requires all elementary students to receive music instruction from a certified music teacher. And at 8 News Now, we have seen and heard that success from students at schools across the valley, featured in our What's Cool at School segment.
What's Cool at School?
We listen to students jamming at an after-school music program called Rock for Change LV at Advanced Technologies Academy. We watched the Cadwallader Middle School choir perform before a packed gymnasium. For the 19th consecutive year, CCSD's Music Ed program has been honored as one of the best communities for music education. Another example of why, the choir at Don and Dee Snyder Elementary. CCSD has the largest mariachi program in the nation, and the district's musical ensembles have been selected to perform in every national music conference throughout the country. We enjoyed Las Vegas Academy of Arts Jazz program with a sound that you need to hear to believe. LVA's jazz program has won 12 Grammy Awards. That is more than any other high school in the country. We had a front row seat when a dozen CCSD high school jazz bands came together at UNLV for the first local version of the long-running Essentially Ellington Festival, celebrating the music of Duke Ellington.
Hearing these students perform like right now, it's my favorite thing in the world.
In addition to music, we see it with programs in dance, visual arts, and theater, such as Del Sol's recent presentation of The Addams Family.
Do you foresee this as your future?
Oh, heck yeah.
And through their CCSD Fine Arts program, the Green Valley High School Madrigal Singers took the stage with the Rolling Stones at T-Mobile Arena. One of the best fine arts programs in the nation, with one of the best rock and roll bands of all time. That is What's Cool at School.
On stage with the Stones. How about that? That's going to do it for this 8 News Now special production. For much more on this new path forward for CCSD, we invite you to visit our website, LasVegasNow.com. What we've done there is post additional stories and our entire interview with Dr. Jesus Jara. You can see it all on LasVegasNow.com. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Loftus. Go have a great night.